Welcome to My Mate in HR, the career sessions. Lucy and I today are joined by Ben Sparks, who is a legal recruiter who at the start of last year started her own legal recruitment firm. The sessions here are about talking to everyday people about their career journeys, and Ben has very kindly come on to tell us about hers. So
Hello.
Thank you.
Hi, nice to
Hi,
meet
Ben.
you. Hello.
So we like just keeping this really open. So it would just be great to understand a bit about your career journey. Where did it start? How did you get to where we are today?
Yeah. So I changed careers. I did a degree in media and communications. I moved to London after I graduated and did work in the media industry. But I did it for 2 years and just realised it wasn't for me, which I was quite gutted about at the time because it's something I'd always aspired to be, and living in London and living the dream. But I don't think London life was for me. So I took that time to go abroad traveling. And when I came back, I purposefully decided that I wanted to go into recruitment.
Okay, what made you think, what was it that didn't work for you about media, and what was it that was attracting you about recruitment?
I think at that point, I don't think it's like that now. If you wanted to do well in the media industry, you had to be in London. I mean, I know there's really good, obviously Manchester, Leeds, there's really good regional setups now. But at that point, there wasn't. And I felt very disillusioned living in London. It was obviously over expensive. I was only a graduate.
Yeah.
And it just didn't live up to its expectations. I think I'd built it up for years and thought it was just going to be amazing. Although I did placements in television, I knew what to expect. I wasn't completely green going into it, but it wasn't for me, I don't think. But I'm really glad I did it. Like, I think living in London was a good experience for me, and I think you learn a lot, don't you? At least I can look back and think, well, like, I tried it. I did it for 2 years.
It's pretty full on, isn't it?
Yeah, it's full. As a graduate, I'm like 18 grand. So yeah, it was full on. And just as I left, I was doing about 4 jobs because I decided to go traveling. I did a 2-week placement at a IT recruitment company, covering the office manager actually. And I was just like, this is it. This is for me. I want to work in recruitment. This is exactly what I'm looking for, sort of more sales based, fast paced, all the sort of stereotypical side of it. So I went off traveling, came back. But at that point, to get into recruitment, you couldn't get in unless you had like some really hard sales experience of total cold calling. So I went and worked for Pitney Bowes on the phones, not on the road, and did that for just under a year, which was quite hard. Well, they didn't have like advanced databases. We didn't use the internet. So literally, you'd have a really not a great database, which used to run after 2 hours, and then you would just give them the yellow pages to work through, and that was it.
Wow.
Wow.
Intense. But I ploughed on because I was determined to be a recruitment consultant, and then I finished that, and then applied and then got in. So yeah, it's an interesting journey to get there.
What firm can you tell us what firm you started in?
So I started at Hayes. I was trying to move to Brighton, bizarrely, at the time to be with an ex-partner. And I got through the first stage of interviews. They said, there's no more jobs in Brighton. Is there anywhere else in the country you'd live? And I'd gone to uni in Leeds. And I said, yeah, I still have friends in Leeds. And it brought me back to Leeds. And I worked for them for 3 years. And I was actually an education recruiter. Yeah, which was interesting. It's a very big practice, and I think the training there was great. And then I decided to leave because I wanted to probably move more towards professional services.
Yeah.
Which took me to my last company, and I worked for them for a number of years. Yeah.
And did you immediately go into the kind of legal recruitment side, or did you move around a bit?
No, immediately to legal. And I really, really like the legal industry. And that was definitely my sort of niche. I preferred more professional services.
What was it about professional services recruitment you enjoyed?
I don't know, because before, I think working in education, it's pretty much 7 till 7 I was working. And you had to be on call a lot, supply teachers. It's quite intense. There's a lot of protocol, obviously, that goes with it. So I really loved my clients, had a really nice client base. I just wanted to move away from the sort of very temporary side of recruitment.
Fair enough.
Also more away from that, yeah.
What led you to do your own thing?
So yeah, I found actually motherhood changed a lot of things for me, and returning back to work after I had 2 maternities quite close together, it wasn't the same for me. And although I think they tried to be flexible around me, I found it really, really hard. And there wasn't an equal balance I found in the office environment and with the people that I worked with. It was very male dominated. So I found that quite tough to work with, and became like you had that feeling then that this isn't for me. I was quite unhappy towards the end. And for me, I loved what I did. I loved my clients, but I wanted to do it for myself. I just had that really strong urge at this point that this is what I wanted to do. And I think when I've worked for 2 agencies, and I've worked in agency recruitment for so long, you are essentially making other people a lot of money. You really do. And what they give recruiters is such a small amount. And you're working long hours, 12-hour days. You have a lot of pressure. I just felt like it wasn't for me. So you have to work things around your family as well.
Yeah, it's quite sad in a way, isn't it? Even on these career sessions and myself, so many women are having to either, deal with it, give up work, or end up going freelance just so they can get the flexibility that they need. Yeah. And I find it quite sad in a way that, women are so impacted.
Unbelievable. Like, I absolutely loved my job and never thought I'd leave, but I can't believe the difference in me coming back. Initially I went back full time, that was fine. And after my second child, I went back 4 days. The difference was just ridiculous. It wasn't the same workplace. And I actually spoke to a candidate this week who had a similar story. And she said that she felt like the senior partners didn't look at her as a whole person. She was regarded as half an employee because she only worked 3 days. And I can totally identify with that.
Yeah, me too.
I think it is sad, and particularly now where women are such a big part of the workforce. And I don't think it is just about women with children. I actually think that this whole thing around part-time working isn't just around women anymore as well. I think it's more of a women's problem because of the emphasis on childcare.
Yeah.
But anyone trying to work part-time, certainly historically, has been insanely difficult, and business just aren't that. I think it is getting better, and I think what's happened in the last year hopefully will have quite a big change on it. But it's still an interesting time. I think it is.
It is. I mean, the candidate I mentioned earlier, I was telling her that in all my years in legal recruitment, I have only placed 1 candidate on a 3-day-a-week basis ever. And that was last month, because it's just not accepted, particularly in legal. But in any industry, like part-time working is so hard. And you try so hard, you think, I've worked so hard, I love my job, and you don't want to be in that situation. But in some ways, I am so glad, because had it not been so bad, I wouldn't be where I am now. So it's funny how those things happen.
Worked out.
Yeah.
So obviously, having gone into business yourself, what's kind of been your learnings from making that transition?
Oh, it's been a really rocky road, I'm not gonna lie. So last year was so hard. I think it just completely collapsed. It didn't really take off because I don't think I was prepared. I didn't realize how much admin was involved setting up a business. So I think, and so that the first 2 months at least, I was, figuring out databases, all this sort of, templates and my terms of business and all this kinds of stuff. And then obviously the pandemic hit, so it completely never took off and then collapsed. And then I was homeschooling. It was really only till July I could refocus and try to push the business forward. And actually from August onwards, it just took off, surprisingly. I don't know how. And I felt blessed, but all the lessons I had on the way. And even this year, I remember by about March, I was like, I've nailed this. I know what I'm doing. It's brilliant. And then I had 2 months of everything going wrong, just things that you can't foresee with clients, with candidates, with situations, and it's been a massive learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
If you could go back to yourself last January, what would you say?
Organised. I just wasn't organised. I was not prepared for how much was involved, and I hadn't thought about things like recently I've started to get all my contracts e-signatures on it, because I've had some really awful experiences with clients. I didn't foresee that happening. Just back up, I didn't have the right legal people behind me, but you don't know until something goes wrong, for example.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we can all
Yeah, you just
sympathize
don't
with
know.
that. Yeah.
Totally. So looking back at your career so far, what would you say your highlight has been?
Oh, absolutely setting up the business without a doubt. Despite last year, I think the fact that it did take off about August time, and I was really, really busy. I was just like, oh my God, how has this happened? I feel so incredibly lucky, because there were times in those first 6 months I just thought, I just going to sack it off. This is not going to work. This isn't going to work. This is awful. And I feel just incredibly blessed. Yeah.
Well, you're obviously, I mean, you say it's lucky, but I've noticed you're obviously very naturally good at marketing.
Yeah, so
and
LinkedIn.
Have a good following on LinkedIn. And
yeah, at the beginning I did enlist a coach, and I cried for the whole time I spoke to him. I said, oh, this is my dream, and this is what's happened. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to cope. And I just never forget him saying to me, if you don't push yourself out there, nobody's going to remember you. You're just going to be forgotten about. And so I really had to step out my comfort zone, because actually I'm quite I'm very outgoing and extrovert, but I'm quite self-conscious. So even like today, or I'm quite private. I don't really like giving out much detail, and here I am posting all sorts of random things going on in my life or in my head every day on LinkedIn. But LinkedIn has been amazing. Absolutely incredible.
It's a lovely community, isn't it?
It is, and there's been like you say, it's turned into a community, and so many people like myself, particularly last year, just all came together and supported each other. All the independents, and it's been amazing. Yeah, really nice.
Totally.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, what would you say has been your most challenging career moment so far?
Oh, I think leaving my last job, it was really, really hard and difficult towards the end. And as I mentioned before, I originally really did love my job. And I think when you've worked somewhere for so long, it's like 14 years, like things that have had, like getting married and having kids, you've attached all those emotions to that job. It's like a real journey you've been on. And making that decision to leave was really tough. So it was quite a hard time in my life.
Did you feel like you'd failed?
Yeah, gutted, on every level. It didn't particularly end very well, so it was really upsetting to deal with the whole thing.
It is amazing how your life, and I suppose it's not really, when you think about how much time you spend at work, it becomes such a core part. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but one of the things I found particularly difficult, going from working in a team with people around me, even when it's difficult, there's always those people. You've got your solid people in there who are your support. You suddenly lose that when you go out on your own. And I have to admit, probably where I've had wobbles, it's been about that, I can't do this on my own. And I think that's where you find support, whether that's a great network on LinkedIn, whether that's, a Lucy in my case, or whatever it is. I think going from working in teams where there's always somebody to suddenly being your business is you, I think that's a really difficult transition to make.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that actually, but that's something I was all right with. I was delighted to have left and be alone, because I really really needed that. And actually I find that if I'm feeling it a bit of a you do miss the banter when you work with nice people, but when you're not in a nice environment, there's nothing
That's
worse,
fair,
is there? Yeah. But and if I do ever feel I want that interaction, well, you just come on LinkedIn, don't you? Or you
true.
WhatsApp somebody that you've met through there.
Yeah, it's like I thought to a point, I thought HR consultants, obviously we're all in competition with each other, but actually I've built a really nice network of HR consultants.
Have you? Yeah.
Who were so mostly I did a course, so some of them are via that, some are just LinkedIn. Tracy I stalked on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And it's now really important to me that network of people doing the same thing as me, and they're all very, very supportive. It's lovely.
Yeah, I might have somebody to to put in touch with you. Actually, I'm trying to say to her that she needs to go down this route. So
we're happy to chat. We've actually, there was somebody that both Lucy and I spoke to about 6 months ago, and she's recently gone out on her own, and we're like, yay!
Got it. Yeah, she took the leap. So for anyone listening or watching who's thinking about a career in recruitment, is there any kind of guidance that you would give them?
Yeah, I think the firm you go to train at is really, really important. So I've only ever worked at big corporates, and there's cons and pros with both, but I would probably avoid a smaller agency when you first start out, just because I think that the training you get is so much better. But I do think probably later on when people go to boutiques, I understand why, a bit more adult and mature. So I think the firm you go to is really important, and the area you go into. You don't want to work in recruitment and work in an area where you're hardly going to make any money. So just things along those lines. Do your research. Glassdoor is pretty honest but cutting. I mean, you don't know how many of these reviews are real or made up, but I always say look on Glassdoor.
How I mean, obviously, as well as a recruiter, for people generally sort of doing job searches, what are your kind of key things that you think everyone looking for a job should know the following 3 things?
Yeah, I think if you're going to look for a job, I would not recommend joining more than one agent, or 2 at the most. So really, really limit yourself and understand what's happening with your CV. Do not spam it or let an agent spam it. Go to someone that's been recommended, if not through LinkedIn or word of mouth. Go to somebody trusted, and LinkedIn is your friend, essentially. It's really important that you've got your profile sorted, that you've got recommendations on there. There are subtle ways. I mean, a lot of candidates say to me they don't want to be proactive on LinkedIn because they don't want their employer to know. But there are subtle things you can do just in terms of your profile, just detail you can add. It's quite important.
Yeah, I think anyone can build their personal brand as a sort of specialist in what they do. There's no harm in that, to be seen.
Yeah, it's a massive asset, and more people need to use it. So I'd say LinkedIn, a good recruiter, and just don't jump at the first opportunity. Just take your time. Don't be pressured into anything.
Yeah, I think that is it. And while no job is forever or has to be forever, you also, particularly I think when there's a driver to leave somewhere because you've probably waited past the point you should have left before you go, oh, okay, I need to leave now. Sometimes it's tempting just to go, that looks better, so that's good enough at this stage. And you're right, because you can very easily end up back in the position you were trying to escape from in the first place if you don't take the time to research and kind of go for the right opportunity.
I wonder why it is that even I've done this so many times, where you stayed in a job and you need to leave and you don't. And I think so many candidates make that mistake. You start to settle with being treated badly, or it's convenient, or it's flexible, or it's well paid, and then you just stay. But deep down, you're so unhappy, and it's just not worth it.
I think part of it is, I was chatting to somebody who said, oh, well, there's not a lot of jobs out there. I said, doesn't matter, you only need one. You don't, and then actually you're not going to find that one if you're not putting yourself out there. And that doesn't, and actually my advice, I think, working with a good recruiter, if you're a strong candidate, if you're a good candidate and you've got a good recruiter, you're honest with them and say, I'm not looking for any job, I'm looking for this type of role. If you're credible, they'll be okay. You know, they'll respect that. And as you say, it's about finding the right person who's not going to just spam out for every single job if that's not what you want. And it's having that relationship. But I think a good recruiter relationship can be such a difference. And actually, as a candidate, there's no harm in it. There's no harm in reaching out and having that conversation, because you never know, you're going to be offered your best job ever. But if you haven't tried, you're not going to get it. like the lottery, you've got to be in it to win it.
So it's quite interesting. I was thinking back, but when I worked in an agency, you know, they're KPI driven over everything. So like number of interviews, number of CVs they send out, everything's KPI driven. And I hardly send out any CVs. I was looking in my outthink, hardly any, because there is actually no need, because I'm picking up the phone, I'm having those conversations, and if there is an opportunity, I will check and then I'll send the CV. So probably like the last place, you know, I often only send 1 to 3 times, you know, CVs out per candidate, and there's actually no need to spam or, you know, dilute their, you know, their CV anywhere. So there's lots of reasons to why agents do that, but candidates need to be really aware of it. And also the biggest thing I need to point out is when an agent's sending a CV, they have got representation for 12 months on their terms of business. And this is, I don't think many candidates realize this actually comes up and is a big issue quite a lot.
And people don't. The other one I used to love is because I used to run the recruitment department for a particular company, was when you'd recruit for something, a job, and then 3 agencies would send you the same CV.
Yeah.
And you'd be
How would you deal with that out of interest?
Well, generally, it comes down to the different situations. So if they're unsolicited, I reject them because I don't want it. But you know, often it's first come, first served. Whoever sent it to me first.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Because you don't have a choice, right? Because that is what it is. But it doesn't look good, and I don't think candidates realise it doesn't reflect on them very well.
No,
because then you're like, you're just because you feel like the person's carpet bombing. And the worst thing is, I've had conversations with a candidate and said, look, did you know I've had these CVs from 3 people, and 2 of them they hadn't given permission.
Gosh, yeah.
That is bad.
And that's really bad.
Really bad. When I register candidates, I actually go through this with them and say, you need to be aware, if you're going to work with another agent, you need to keep a strict list about who's speaking, you know, where they're sending a CV. And I had a really nice candidate recently, and I stopped working with him because twice I sent his CV, it had already gone. He had no idea. And when I tried to speak to him about it, he was like, well, I don't know if they sent the profile or the CV. And I said, where do you think your CV's gone? He said, I don't know. And I was like, I can't work with you. Like, this is putting me in a really awkward position every time I send your CV.
Yeah.
And essentially, his CV had been spammed everywhere.
Yeah. And that dilutes that candidate's impact.
Yeah, it's really tough.
For sure.
Yeah.
What about people getting into it? So very, very quickly. So if someone who's just getting into a career is on here, they're more junior. Obviously, sometimes it's not as easy to get a relationship with a recruiter. Obviously, there are specialist recruiters as well. But is there any advice you'd give for someone starting their career in terms of what you would want to see on a CV, or what they should be thinking about?
Starting their career in recruitment, or
in any of the kind of areas you've worked in, where you've got somebody who's quite new, kind of coming into an industry?
I do get approached about this a lot. So again, I would probably in recruitment, I would maybe use 1 or 2 rec to rec, so recruitment agencies, and go with someone, you know, who's got good testimonials or been recommended, and just be very careful about, do your research about who and where they're sending your CV. Yeah. They might say to you, oh, X, Y, Z, but do your own research, go on Glassdoor, look on LinkedIn. Are they good companies? You know, some people I know do company checks, you know, have they got a good credit rate? I don't think people think about all these things. And just do your due diligence before your details get sent anywhere. And then, you know, look at it. And obviously, if you go to an interview, just make sure you're well prepared. Yeah.
that could be a whole podcast on it by itself.
I know. I prepare my candidates quite a lot and go through quite a lot with them, but it staggers me. I had a candidate I spoke to the other day. She was told about a job No, only got sent some emails, some details for, not called to prepare, didn't call her afterwards to see how the interview went. 2 weeks passed. She then contacted the agent and said, I presume I haven't got this, I haven't heard from you. Went, oh yeah, it's been filled. Like, just nothing. Like,
That's awful.
Yeah,
Terrible,
no,
isn't it?
awful. No aftercare, no preparation, nothing. You know, needless to say, she wouldn't be using that agency again. But
well, I think the other thing is not going for something. To your point, I once had I took a short stint in recruitment in between university and law college. Somebody said to me, recruitment, that's the best thing you can do, you know, and I'm like, because I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do. So I thought, that's fine. And I remember going to get sent to this interview, and I kept saying to the recruiter, I'm really not sure this is right for me, because I lived out in the sticks a bit. It was a job in London that you had to be there for 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And it was like 8 till 8 and stuff like that. And I remember going to this interview and literally feeling sick, thinking, why am I here? And I got talked into going to this interview for all the wrong reasons. And I just remember sitting there and actually, I think one of the things that struck me, they asked me this question, which again says a lot about them. They said, would you cheat to win? I said, what do you mean? They said, when you're in a race, would you cheat to win? I said, well, no, because that's not winning. That's just cheating. Like, and the feedback I got is, yeah, you're not the sort of person they're looking for. You haven't got the right attitude. And this was for an IT recruitment firm. And I just remember thinking, literally everything about this was bad. And I didn't, you know, I should have just gone with my instincts. But you live and learn, right?
Yeah, I mean, what are the ethics in that? It's just awful.
You know, when somebody asks you a question like, have I just misheard them? Like, I must have misheard them.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many interviews I had where I had to like stand on a chair and sell a pen, and you know, just awful.
That's just humiliating.
It's humiliating. You're like a performing seal, aren't you? Yeah. And I remember going to an interview in London to get into PR once, and there were loads of chairs, different sizes, and they put me on the smallest chair, bearing in mind I'm quite small, and they were all on bigger chairs. I didn't get that interview because I was totally intimidated the whole way through the interview. Weird.
Jesus.
Very strange.
Yeah.
Good. Well, do you have any sort of final thoughts or comments that you'd like to share with everyone?
Yeah, I think just be careful. If you're looking for a job, just take your time. Don't rush. You know, do your research on the company or the recruiter, and be aware of what's happening with your CV, because that's your personal details. You know, don't be talked into anything. It's quite important.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. This has been really, really interesting. And thank you for the tips as well. I think it's one of those things when you get to a certain point in your career, things you kind of take a little bit for granted, particularly if you're in HR or recruitment. Yeah, it's really important. And for a lot of people, they're just not on their radar. So that's been great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Thanks. Bye.